Well, hello, I'm Joe Hyde here on I guess to your left. Is that the left of the screen?
I think so.
And on to my right is, we're going to start calling you the San Angelo Live senior political analyst
Okay, that'll
and
work.
expert of all things San Angelo politics,
That'll work.
Yantis Green. We pulled him out of retirement to come over here and talk about the 2014 police chief runoff election.
The 24.
Oh, gee, did I say 14?
You said 14.
I've been living in the past. Anyway, yeah, 2024. So, Yantis, you've had this vacation time to be kind of taking it in. Give me some of your observations on, I guess, since you left. You left about the time the May 4th election was.
Yep.
And so you've had some time to soak it all in. What have you seen?
Well, it's an interesting campaign. You've got basically two. You've got a classic, almost incumbent in Mike Hernandez, and then you've got the newcomer in Travis Griffith, who hasn't held office, hadn't been elected to office. Mike, of course, is supported, endorsed by the current chief and most of the leadership, the staff there. And Mike won the most votes in the primary, in the general municipal election.
Yeah, you're starting to talk like a Republican delegate.
Well, I know. But since then, there's been, of course, the ground game has shifted for both camps, and the social media team that Griffith had has been working overtime, putting out very nice posts and very enthusiastic posts. And this is one of those campaigns where between the primary, the general election and the runoff, there was a lot of enthusiasm ginned up on social media. And still, as I said during our coverage of the municipal election, I'm not sure that translates into votes, but we'll see.
You mean the question is, will a superior social media management of a campaign equate to votes? Can you get people that are sitting on Facebook on their buttocks, so to speak, to get to the poll and vote?
That's it, and it doesn't matter whether it's that or it's an old time barn meeting or you have a barbecue or a dinner, and it's nice to, it's easy to get them all ginned up at a meeting like that, but you got to get them to the polls.
Right.
And demographically, younger people don't vote.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to get to the polls, or they just don't go do it, and the numbers bear that out. But we'll see.
Interesting. Well, the other for Hernandez's side, by the way, I broke my finger.
Oh God.
Didn't really break it. Shannon had to fix it. It got infected. But anyways, I hate to hold that up. It looks like I have a really long finger, but it's just bandaged. But anyway, on Hernandez's side, getting the Hispanic vote would be, I would think if I were Mike Hernandez, that would be my strategy. But traditionally, as a block, Hispanics don't vote.
It depends on what kind of race you're talking about, and are you talking about citywide or regional or state by state, but not in the recent past. Since 2020, probably not.
What was the 2020?
Well, I mean the recent elections. In the past, yes, the Hispanic vote was pretty well monolithic, but it's not anymore. And part of that, the Roe v. Wade thing kind of split that.
Yeah. The last time I saw, I've been right here a long time too. Last time I think I saw the Hispanic vote save a candidate was Tim Vasquez in 2008.
Okay.
He was facing 4 challengers. That's about 9,300 people voted. Everyone is, you have a 5-way race, you expect to have a runoff.
Right.
He won that thing with like 53% of the vote.
Yeah.
No runoff.
Yeah.
And it was primarily because I think Hispanics went out and voted for him.
Well, it could be. And, that just brought to mind August Pfluger had 11 people running against him, and he won that.
He got the veteran vote. I don't know if it was a veteran vote, but people, he's a fighter pilot, and he never loses. Fair-headed guy.
Yeah, but there was you had 11 different candidates. Some of them were viable. Some of them shouldn't have been on the ballot. But it muddied the waters and really split the vote.
Yeah.
but he was obviously the strongest guy out
Well,
there.
the other thing about the August Pfluger thing is you had to worry about the Midland vote,
Yeah.
and a San Angelo guy winning the Midland vote when you had two or three viable Midland.
You had three viable Midland folks, and that split
Yeah.
the vote over there, and opened the door wide for
Right.
August.
And we're waiting on getting the results. We anticipate to get some results within the next couple of minutes. And as soon as we do, we will put them up on the screen. So you'll hear about the results here first. So just stay with us, and we'll pontificate about politics until we get some results and talk a little bit about the campaigns and what we saw in the campaigns. Anything that Mike Hernandez did right?
Mike did a lot of stuff right. I think his first 100 days piece came out. I think that when he went to the Cactus Hotel and had the command staff and all those people that endorsed him and had that media event, that was smart. He's been doing he's still going to public events. I saw him at one last Saturday that I didn't see Travis at, and
that was at the church thing.
That was at the church thing.
You were at the church thing.
I was at the church thing, working the church thing. Now that I'm retired, I can do stuff like that. But his ground game is there, and it's solid, and Steve McLaughlin knows how to do that, and we've worked on campaigns before, and there's a lot to that. It's not two-dimensional. These races are multi-dimensional, and you have multiple fronts, and there's a lot to do and a lot to take care of.
All right, what do you think the biggest thing Travis Griffith did correctly?
Travis's social media was outstanding. He used the network at his church very effectively during the primary. And,
not the primary, the original
during
election.
the municipal election, the first election.
Right.
And I think that we were talking about early voting. We know the raw numbers, how many people actually cast ballots. And early voting started off with a bang, and I think that's a result of enthusiasm.
Right.
And I think there's an enthusiasm gap between the two, a perceived social media enthusiasm gap between the two camps.
We were just handed a note here. I want to remind the audience what the results were from the May 4th election. Of course, this is the runoff here on June 15th of the top two. We had a three-way race on May 4th. Travis Griffith attracted 3,088 votes. Mike Hernandez attracted 3,286, only getting 49.52% of the vote.
Yeah.
And then Chris Cimino, he's a lieutenant there, along with Mike Hernandez. He got 265 votes.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, man, he worked hard for those 265 votes. He said, "Don't vote for me."
Well, yeah, and that was sort of upon reflection. I could see after that election what they were doing, and Griffith was sort of playing the good cop, and Cimino was playing the bad cop throughout that.
So you think they were working together?
I think they were. I don't think there's any evidence that they weren't.
Right. And so Griff and Cimino worked together, so Cimino could be the bad cop and say bad things and be negative campaigner, and Griff can be baby Jesus.
He could be the good cop. Yeah,
the good
he could
cop.
be the good guy, and that's not an uncommon strategy.
Right. So the hope was that for people that are casually looking at this and they're for Griffith, since he got 46.51% of the vote, if he could keep his voters in the runoff and get all of Cimino's, then that puts him at 40 or 50.5%.
Yeah, and that shows sort of checkers versus chess type view of how elections work.
I think it's different than that. I think once there was a runoff, my view was all votes were again in play again. Now you had some that were going to lean Mike and some that were going to lean Travis.
Yeah.
But I thought all votes were in play.
Well, and I think that if one of the things that I would have advised both camps to do is go out and get more votes. You go back and knock on doors, the ones that you missed, the ones you went to and didn't get an answer that are strong voters, have a strong voting record. In the partisan world, we would call that a strong Republican or a strong Democrat voter. And you go back and knock on that door 2 or 3 times until you actually get to talk to somebody and get a commitment one way or the other.
Do we have some news, Mr. Bellini? Mr. Producer says we have some news. So hopefully we'll get it up on the screen here. And right now, this is Joe. I'm Joe Hyde. This is Yantis Green. We're both in San Angelo, Texas. We're talking about the June 15th, 2024 police chief runoff election. San Angelo is the only city I know of its size that elects its own police chief, as opposed to having a city manager appoint one with city council, I guess, approval. Mm-hmm. And so we just went through an election, and we got some early returns. All right, here we go. Looking at it right now, how's it look to you, Yantis? Looks like Mike Hernandez ran away with the absentee.
See the mail-in ballots, but the total is what you're looking at: 28-23 for Travis and 27-59 for Mike Hernandez, 50% to 49%. Travis leading the early voting and the mail-in. So right now, Travis is in the lead by
1%,
by a percentage point.
Wow!
And we'll see if that shakes out through election day.
So one of the questions we had, when we were looking to analyze the numbers, because you don't know anything about who voted for who, but you know how many people voted, mm-hmm. and we saw 1,470 extra people voted early for the runoff than they did for the extra people voted early this time for the runoff as they did for the May 4th election. So where did those votes come from? So it looks like they're gonna be in a dogfight. You're saying about 65 votes. What is that for? What are you trying to say, Bellini?
It's 65 vote difference.
It's a 65 vote difference right now. And we have no idea how many, if that's all of the early voting, or I think it's probably just some of the early voting.
Normally she counts all that. That's all one.
You're right. That might be all of it.
That should be.
Yeah.
I mean, looking at almost 5,000 votes, 4,700 votes.
And now what is bad for Hernandez is during the May 4th election, he got creamed during election day voting. That's how Travis got enough votes to prevent a win, but without a runoff.
Yeah, and we were looking at those numbers. We were kind of talking about that earlier, and it's the voter turnout's been light. This is Father's Day weekend. Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. And you went to the polling places throughout the day, and they weren't overwhelmed.
No, it didn't look like it was very busy at all. Most of them, like Paul Ann was 100 voters. This is like by 5:30 this afternoon. Belmore Baptist Church there on Bell Street had 100 voters. You had about 85 over there at the Boys and Girls Club South off Avenue Y and Ben Ficklin. But where the action was TxDOT.
Right.
Where they had, I think, 575 voters at that point at 5:30, and then Angelo Bible Church on Sherwood Way, just beyond the old HEB there on the north side of Sherwood Way, they had 275 voters. So those two polling places seem to be where the action was. I mean, St. Mark. I went to St. Mark's Church. I went to Southgate Church of Christ. Went all over just to see what how people are doing. But everywhere there's no lines anywhere.
Yeah. And we can talk about the people not taking advantage of the votes. I mean, this is still going to be less than 20% of registered voters.
Oh yeah, this is going to. I mean, if I'm thinking, I mean, I don't know, but if I were to bet in Vegas, I'd say we would be right around somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 in-person votes today.
Okay,
that's what I'm thinking, but I might be wrong. I mean, but that's from driving around. It's kind of a little bit informed guess. They're saying there were 5,581 total early votes.
Okay,
so it looks like we got them all there.
So 2,500, roughly 2,500 votes on election day. What we were looking earlier, that the turnout was about 25% in the municipal election on election day, as opposed to
it was 15.5% last on May 4th. That's what it was. Out of 50, I think it's 55.5.
55.5, so
yeah.
15%. That. There you go. There's 70% of voters saying, "Nah, it's okay, doesn't matter, it's all right," and that's that's a very loud voice there. Everything's okay. We don't care who wins.
Well, I mean, it really depends on who. I mean, I think elections like this. Elections are like concerts. Okay, if you have Aerosmith headlining the concert, you'll have more ticket sales than you would if you had, like, I don't know, some swing band. You know, in these down ballot cases, this is not President Trump versus Biden.
Right.
This is not Abbott versus whoever. This is way down ballot, a municipal election for a police chief. So the headline, you don't have a headliner for it. This is the headliner. This is like the difference between going to a concert at the American Airlines Center in Dallas versus going to a concert at the River Stage in San Angelo.
Well, and we don't have anything to compare it to because we're still the only city that elects a police chief.
Right. Other than ourselves, we can go back and look at other elections. I mean, the 2016 election, where the runoff election between current chief Frank Carter and former chief Tim Vasquez was over 10,000 during the runoff. But they also had a runoff of SMD5 City Council. That was Lane Carter versus Liz Grunstaff. Yeah. This was it. It was a solo act on the stage. So, you know, I think that is part of it.
Well, and I think your early voting numbers show that, again, that enthusiasm was they were able to maintain that enthusiasm up to the first day of early voting.
Right.
And everybody voted in early voting.
Right.
And what you're seeing on Election Day are the traditional voters who just want to vote on Election Day. They don't, you know, for whatever reason, they don't want to cast a vote early.
Hey, James, put the returns back and maybe refresh it, see if we got any new numbers out of the county.
Don't see anything yet.
Nothing new. Anything else that we're seeing from our data guys in the back?
Not yet. That's all we have right now.
Well, I can give you an example of how important voting is. I told this story twice at luncheons earlier this week. I got in my car at my house on private property, and I backed out and onto a public road, which is a government road.
Right.
And I had an envelope that was delivered to me by the federal government, the U.S. Post Office.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over to my mailbox, which is owned by the federal government, and I got my mail, and there was this letter from the state of Texas that said, you need to renew your tags. So I got on the government street,
right,
drove down the government street, the city street, and made it to the business US 67, which is Sherwood Way, which is a federal highway maintained by the state. So you get two levels of government there, and drove all the way down that government street to the Keys building,
which is a government building.
Which is a government building,
right?
It's a county-owned building, and I got out and I walked in and stood in line in the government line and waited for the government employee
with government air conditioning
to call my name and say, "Okay, show me your papers."
Right.
So I showed my papers. I had my required inspection for my vehicle and the letter that said this is how much your renewal is going to cost, and I showed her and my ID, my state ID. This is me, government issued ID, and then I showed him my insurance, which is required by the state of Texas, required by the government. So I've had all of my documents, all of my papers there, and she looked at me and looked at that and said, "Is the address still the same?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And she said, "Okay." And she took her big rubber stamp and stamped it and handed me my tags, and I had left the government building and went back to my house. And everywhere along that trip, and I didn't get stopped by a city police officer.
Which would have been a government stop.
Which would have been an employee overseen by one of these guys
right.
At this election. So throughout that process, there's an elected official in charge of all that. So if you don't vote, I mean, I was completely covered by elected officials the whole time. The city council, the street I drove on, they're in charge of the street. Got to the county building. There's the county commissioners, the county judge.
Where are you going with this, Yantis?
Well, I get to vote for those people.
Oh, okay. So that's like
they're not telling me.
So you're saying that the people
I give up that power to them.
Right.
To administer.
So are you saying
that?
Are you saying this is that other people ought to take advantage of the chance to vote for those people?
I'm saying if you're not voting, you're letting someone else control your life.
Right.
It's that important.
Back to the stats. Right now, it looks like we got Travis Griffith leading with a total of 65 votes, with most of early voting in. I've been told that there's 5,581 total early votes. So I don't know if that equals. I don't think that equals 5,581, but this is the latest that we have. And then this is from the Vasquez Carter thing from a while back. We had, oh my goodness, back in those days, election day. I mean, they just killed it on election day. But anyway, let's not get it all confused.
Yeah, and that was a different time because most people voted on election day back then, and this shift to voting early is a new phenomenon.
Well, I mean, I've seen surges on election day recently. I mean, particularly during the Trump elections of 2016 and 2020, you see a big surge.
That's not this block of voters. That's not
Right.
these folks.
Right. But anyway, that's what we're looking at. Mike Hernandez won the absentee votes so far. Looks like there's about 800 of them, maybe a little bit over 800 of them. And then he's losing in early in-person voting, and we don't have any election day results right now. So it's a very tight race, 51-49%. Our system doesn't round down to the .00 like the elections office does. We're just going to get the 51-49%. But it's going to be a nail biter all night. We're going to stay with you.
Well, yeah, and 65 votes. I said earlier when I got here that it's not going to be a 1 or 2 vote election. It's not going to be that close, even though it seemed like that, during the municipal election that it would be really close. I don't think it's going to be that way. I think that again, it's not about how many nice, really nice social media posts you have, or how many electronic billboards you have, or how many, direct mail pieces you have, or how many yard signs you have. What matters is how many people you get to the voting location, to the poll to cast a.
And how do you do that? That's the question. I mean, there's new ways to do it now.
I get paid a lot of money to do that. So
yeah.
I'm not.
Oh, you're a
tell
consultant
you exactly,
now.
Exactly how you do that, but there's a process.
So like Ted Cruz, when he ran for Senate, remember there was that long delay between when he was running against Dewhurst. It was in 2012. Mm-hmm. Remember they were trying to get the redistricting done, and so they didn't set a runoff election. It was Dewhurst versus Cruz. They didn't know when the election was going to be. Cruz had all that time to get organized, mm-hmm. and he hired some of the smartest people. And what they would do is they would go through the day. Every day the county elections office publishes a list of people who voted. So you have a list of people who voted. They go and then cross those people off. Mm-hmm. And then, like let's say you're halfway through early voting and you know that these people have already voted. You've already scratched them off your direct mail list, your phone texting list, and all that kind of stuff. Yep. And then there's the other thing that like Obama used where they identified people on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And they reached out to them. They had someone reach out to them on Messenger and say, "Hey, I think you're really cool looking. Won't you join my crusade to destroy America? I mean, to vote for Obama." So all these tactics that are used in the big cities are now starting to filter out here into San Angelo.
They are, and to date, social media is not. Facebook is not the most reliable way to get votes.
You don't think?
I don't think. No.
Well, I know on like the San Angelo Live page, it's shifted a lot. It looks like we still got the same 49% right now. But anyway, I know that it's shifted a lot over the last 10 years since we've been doing San Angelo Live. Mm-hmm. It used to be you had kind of a mix of everybody. But I think in 2016, when we started having the Hillary versus Trump, and then 2020, when we started putting people in Facebook jail and all the other crap, the men left. So Facebook has less men in it than it did in 2014, 2015. The men said, "The hell with this." And they're just not there. If you look at the stats, like the demographics for our Facebook page on San Angelo Live, it's like 65% female.
Yeah.
But when you look at the stats for the people coming to our website, it's 51% male.
Right.
So why is it that there's a disparity there? The reason is I think men have uninstalled the app for their phone. They probably still have their account, but they're not looking at their Facebook every 5 seconds like they were in 2014.
Well, I think that part of that may be true, but I think there's a number of them that just got to the point where posting wasn't worth the headache.
Yeah.
And they're still monitoring Facebook. They're still watching Facebook, but they're just not commenting.
And so now all the
They're not
weirdos have their hands on the Ouija board, and we get to watch all the weird choices they have. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I mean, a comment thread on Facebook is like a Ouija board.
Yeah, and then you throw in AI and bots and people that are out there intentionally trying to get hits on their social media. They're on their comments. They're trying to poke the bear.
Right.
Exactly. It's intentional. It has nothing to do with what they believe or think, and that's why I say that doesn't translate into a vote.
Right. Well, speaking of votes, we're still waiting for some of the in-person Election Day votes to come in for the returns, and I think a few more in-person early voting should come in. So we're still waiting on that.
Well, and we get kind of wrapped up in the numbers, and we should. But early voting, when we say early voting, that includes the mail-in ballots, and it includes the absentee ballots. And it includes those folks that went in person down to the Keys building for that 2-week period of early voting.
Right.
So it's there's more than just one piece to that puzzle.
So and right now, what they've counted, we have Mike Hernandez is losing to Travis Griffith by 65 votes.
Yeah,
65 votes.
And if it stays around. If it stays that low, the gap of 65 or less, then this thing won't be over tonight. It won't be over until all the mail-in ballots are in.
All the provisionals and things like that.
Provisionals are out there too. Those aren't even going to be looked at until
a week later,
for a couple of days at least. So
there's a process they go through the week after the election. Some mail-in ballots are acceptable after the election day, like if they're military overseas, and they have a whole bunch of little criteria whether or not they accept the ballot. And then there's a whole bunch. There'll probably be in this election, I would anticipate they probably have 50 provisional ballots. And a provisional ballot would be you showed up at the polling place and said, "Hey, I'm John Smith. I live at 123 Main Street in San Angelo, Texas." They say, "We don't have a John Smith on our voter rolls."
Right.
And so what they'd have to do is they got to go research, if John Smith is registered, and maybe they didn't enter him in the computer or something like that. So you have those, or you might be John Smith and you live in Christoval, but you tell them you have an address in San Angelo, but your voter registration is Christoval, but you just moved. Humana, you can make the argument that my ballot should count. So those are provisionals. During the last thing, we made a big deal out of the provisional ballots because there are enough. I think there were 77 provisional ballots out last time, mail-in and provisional ballots, and it could have flipped the difference. It could have flipped the difference. Gotten Mike that 50% plus one, Mike Hernandez.
Yeah. And
so we made a little bit big deal because that was like one of the only times I've ever seen provisional mail-in ballots could change the outcome of the election.
Yeah, and the race would have to be that close again to get to that point, and it very well may be.
Right.
It very well may be. But that's why voting is so important. We know that Vonna Hudson and the team and the volunteers
and Vonna Hudson is the
elections administrator. Right. They've done a really fantastic job. She's very experienced and runs a very professional office, and you saw that with the county commissioner race, the primary race, where there was one vote.
Right.
One vote unofficially on election night. One vote when it became official, and one vote at the recount.
That was Ralph Holscher versus Michelle DeRusso.
DeRusso, yes.
And that was just this past primary.
Yes,
this is
that
in March.
was in the primary.
Yeah.
And the constable race there in precinct 4 was not as close, but I think it was 23 ballots. But whatever it was, that number remained consistent through the unofficial election night votes and the official canvass votes and the recount. So we had 2 recounts, and this election team under Vonna Hudson has been spot on. I mean, absolutely perfect So
she's quite confident now.
Well, and she should be, and that we know there are shenanigans in elections in other places, in other states, under other programs. But,
like in Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania comes to mind. But here and now in Tom Green County, that is not the case. We have a rock solid elections office, and I think that whatever results we see will be pretty much perfect.
And the Texas legislature has passed some no nonsense, tough election integrity measures, primarily in response to Harris County, which is where Houston is, and there's all kinds of shenanigans down there. Yeah. So all you got to do is go, so what is Harris County going to do this time? And write a law against that outlaws it. Like there was one where they had drive-through voting. Where you could be the voter, right?
And 24-hour voting,
Well, yeah, 24-hour voting. So all the ballots would get cashed at 2 a.m.
By one person.
Yeah, but the one that really got me was the drive-through voting. So you have someone who's the vote harvester riding in the passenger seat with a van load of people who probably shouldn't be voting.
Yep.
And she'll know all the rules. She'll get them all voted, and won't even have to get out of the car. And so you're going to talk about stealing elections.
Well, and that election shenanigans are not a new thing. San Angelo's seen them before. Texas has seen them before. Del Rio's seen them before. You know that.
Del Rio is home of shenanigans. If it didn't happen in Harris County, it happened in Val Verde County. So.
But there have been some the ballot harvesting at nursing homes here in San Angelo decades ago. It's a well-known fact.
These are interesting stories that I have. One of the voter integrity is a big deal for me. I started my journey as a journalist getting started on a voter integrity issue. And what happened was back in 1996, it was Bob Dole versus Bill Clinton. Mm-hmm. I was the voting officer in charge of getting people to vote at Laughlin Air Force Base in Del Rio. It was an extra duty. It was one of those things where I'm trying to make major and I got to do some extra duty, so it was my extra duty. And we had 800 additional people from either absentee or at Laughlin vote. And Laughlin is in Precinct 1, which is a historically Hispanic district. I mean, that's where the old neighborhood of San Felipe is. Anyway, Precinct 1 did a couple things. First thing it did was it elected the first Republican county commissioner ever because of this election. And also, at that time, 1996, there had not been a Republican sheriff in a border county in 114 years.
Wow.
And those 800 votes, elected a guy named Dwayne Jernigan to be the Republican sheriff of Val Verde County.
All right.
And the Democrats went wild. And so the husband of Ann Richards, the former governor, I think he's the ex-husband, I can't remember his name, but he sued in federal court. He sued Val Verde County, said that you allowed predominantly white military voters to dilute the Hispanic vote.
Of course.
And I'm like, they're about to roll back. He wants to throw out 800 votes of people who served in this country. They're going to roll back the Voting Rights Act of 1964. And the people they're going to do it to are people serving in the military. And I said, no, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I go to the newspaper, the Del Rio News Herald, and talk to the old publisher there. His name was Joe San Miguel. Okay. And Joe San Miguel said, oh, no, we're not going to touch this. This is too controversial.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? How could this be controversial? So at the time, I owned DelRio.com. It was a little startup. Remember back in the day, you had these modems. You had to dial up the internet. Mm-hmm. Me and two other partners, we owned DelRio.com. We figured out we had more subscribers to our internet service than he had subscribers to his paper.
Okay.
And so we started Del Rio Live. And the first stories we did were about Dwayne Jernigan not being allowed to take his duty off. He was elected to office. He was not allowed to be sworn in as sheriff because they had a federal injunction against him in federal district court. I think the guy's name was Judge Beery. And anyway, eventually Dwayne Jernigan won. Now, the precinct chairman, the Democrats, did a number on him. They went back and looked for pictures, and this is before the internet. They found a picture of him in Germany dressed in a Klan outfit. So he, after he figured I might as well just drop out of this thing. But he was actually representing himself in court pro se. But he was representing himself, and he was actually pretty good. His name was Murray Cotchell, but yeah, they found a picture of him in a Klan outfit, like a white, whatever, snowman outfit.
That's a campaign move.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he basically had to quit. He had to quit.
Yeah.
The Republican Party wouldn't support him either. But Dwayne Jernigan went out and served, I think, 3 terms as sheriff. He was a pretty good sheriff down there. Now it's Joe Frank Martinez. He defeated Dwayne Jernigan in 2008. Jernigan and I are still friends. We still talk every once in a while. But that's how I got started. But that was a form of voter fraud, in that the Democrats are using lawfare to try to throw out votes, just like they do now. The second situation I found with lawfare down in Del Rio was we had a school. The school district was basically, it was a jobs program for the buddies. So if your group controlled the school district, all your buddies' wives got jobs, right? And there's really no accountability and that kind of thing. So they hired this superintendent. His name was Dr. Joseph Lopez, and he started applying Deming's 14 points of quality to the school district, where he's measuring things at certain points. And one of the measurements he wanted to do is they had a HOSA program that trained high school students how to be nurses. So they got their basic level nursing certification, or they could after they took this course. Well, none of these students were taking the test to pass the exam to become certified nurses. And so he forced them to do that. Oh my God, you think the whole world was going to end. Anyway, none of them could pass the test because the classes were BS, and the people teaching it were crony hires and that kind of thing. Anyway, they ran him off. They ran that superintendent off. They want to get a new superintendent. But in order to do that, they needed to replace a member of the school board. And there was a African American lady, and her son was much beloved in Del Rio. He was Roger Blanks. He was a very famous MLB baseball player. So she was kind of like a shoe-in to be on the school board. So she's on the ballot, and she's the only one on the ballot.
Okay.
So it looks like she's going to win. She's going to be on the school board. Well, she wasn't for the scheme to replace the superintendent and all that kind of stuff. So they ran this write-in ballot operation off of 3 ladies that did a ballot operation, ballot harvesting. Her names was Dora Escobedo, Dora Gonzalez. I can't remember the other ladies, but you could hire them for $2,500, and they'll get you 400 or 500 votes. And the way they did it was they would hold a party. And you go to the party, and you had to fill out your ballot application, right? And they serve the beer and the barbecue, and then someone at the county would tip them off. And when they sent out the ballots, and they'd announce, we're having another party, but you got to bring your ballot. Or they would meet that person at their door and go in there and help them fill out the ballot. So I subpoenaed. I did an open records request for all the ballot envelopes. Every one of them that had had a ballot, or we didn't know if it had a write-in ballot or not, but majority of those ballots that were cast in that school board election were assisted by those 2 ladies, Dora Escobedo, Dora Gonzalez. And now they changed the law because of that and said you can't assist anyone unless they're, like your immediate family. You can't just go out there and do it, but people are still doing it, And that's how they harvest. That's how they do it. And so now when you look at 2020, they didn't even need to have a party. They just had pallets of ballots. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, there's no doubt about it in my mind that happened. They knew exactly where they needed to put them, and they just had these pallets of ballots. They just direct them where they needed to go. No party required. And we still had parties in some of the voter fraud cases here in Texas. We had a couple of cases like it down in San Antonio, where we had the party ballot guy, and Paxton actually went after him, but then they told Paxton he can't prosecute voter fraud cases.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we're going to go with voter integrity, but I just gave you a brain dump of the stuff I've been through on voter integrity.
And this is an important election, and the voting is over. So we also have 2 more elections coming up that are critical. The first one is the general election in November.
Yep.
The presidential election, if we have one.
The 2 old guys. Wait. If we have one?
They're, the political machine, the Democrat political machine and the deep state are doing everything they can to disqualify Donald Trump from the ballot. Are they going to get it done before November? I don't know.
I think they're going to put him in jail.
That's
I think he's
Seems to be the plan.
I think before the Republican convention, he is going to be in jail.
But that is a very important election, and if we get past that one, then we're going to have an election for mayor of San Angelo in May of 25. And that's also going to be an important election because the next mayor is going to have some challenges come up, and one of them is funding renovations to the Coliseum.
What do you mean? The mayor's going to have to redo the Coliseum?
That plan is out there. The Rodeo Association has the plan.
You're talking about the $50 million plan?
The $40 million, $50 million plan. It was $40 million last time.
It was $24.5 million when they started, but inflation.
The new mayor will have the opportunity to see what they can do about that.
So what do you think about that? Should we do it?
Of course we should.
Why?
It should have been done years ago.
Why?
Because the stock show and rodeo is the most has the most economic impact of any event, and has historically since the 50s, and that Coliseum was built for that. And there was vision and leadership in the 50s that got that thing built. It was way too big for San Angelo at the time. You've got now it's 2024. You need one that's 10,000, 15,000 seats.
Right.
They've already invested $1 million into the plan. The plans to fund it have been rejected thus far, and one of the reasons is the city council is not comfortable with spending that kind of money right now.
Well, I mean, let me just give you their point of view. This is not my point of view. I'm just giving you the other side. That building, the rent, Civic Events, which is an enterprise fund for the city of San Angelo, generates about $100,000 in revenue from that Coliseum every year. That's it, $100,000 in revenue. So why would you go spend $40 million on something that generates $100,000 a year? I mean, you do the internal rate of return on your calculator, and you tell you that is a bad investment.
Well, again, we've got to look at it historically. We've got a 90-year-old rodeo.
Okay.
That's outgrown the facility that it's in.
Where's
the vision?
Well, there you go. I'll go with the
vision?
I'll go with the vision. And I was being the what do you call it? I was trying to give you the other side of the view.
Yeah.
The tax increase. Let's say they went the original plan. They thought the county should do it. The tax increase would have been $50 a year.
Right.
To finance it then.
Yeah. So that's illegal, but
I know it's illegal, but if they somehow were able to do transfer it over to the county, and transfer the ownership to the county, and the county was able to do a bond, and the idea was that the Coliseum is enjoyed by people in Christoval as much as it's enjoyed by someone that lives on Canyon Creek.
Yeah, but the city owns it.
But they can sell it.
Well, yeah, but it's still a city problem. It is an issue that is sitting right smack dab in the middle of the city council, and it's been put off until we get a new mayor. That's why I'm saying that the May election next year is going to be critical.
Right.
That issue has got to be addressed.
So one of the plans they have for the city to finance it, we don't have the money in our Costa DC and our economic development money, because 72% of our money from our half-cent sales tax goes to water development projects. So where Abilene might have $20 million a year in revenue that they could go borrow bonds against, we have maybe $1.6 million left when we're done for Costa DC, and that's not enough to finance $40 million project. So they're going to have to get the money somewhere. And I know that the Rodeo Association said, "Hey, we'll raise $10 million of it." And their proposal is we'll do $500,000 a year for 20 years. We'll pay the city that. Oh, and that's before they pay for rent and that kind of thing. So $500,000 a year for 20 years. And then what they were thinking is the city is always retiring debt. Well, when you retired, $1.5 million in debt, just renegotiated to continue to pay for the Coliseum. So that's their idea of how to do it. That's an idea of how to do it. So you wouldn't have a bond election per se. You would just take retiring debt and then redebtize yourself. Now, I think the county probably should. I would go back and look at the county as an option too, a county bond. And the reason I know you're saying is because you can sell the thing to the county. I mean, here, have the Coliseum for $1.
Why would the county want it?
Well, because the county
constitutionally they do different things.
Well, the county can also they can issue bonds. They can have a referendum, have a bond referendum,
Sure,
allow people to vote for it.
But it's still a city facility. Why isn't the city doing that?
Because the county can do a referendum on county-wide as opposed to citywide.
As a former county commissioner, I can tell you that
I know they don't want to do it because they're too worried. I mean, they're strapped. They're lucky just to get the dang road work done.
well,
I know that.
and what counties do is criminal justice.
Okay.
Counties are responsible for the
Every
constitutional.
every other place in the world. I mean, Judge Roy Hoffines of Harris County had a suite in the Astrodome because it was built
Cool.
by the county.
Great.
All right.
It was built by the county. That's the key. The county built it. The Coliseum in Odessa, the one in Nolan County, they belong to the county.
Every county
But the
has a
county-
Coliseum.
The county built them, though.
That
Tom Green
doesn't
County
matter.
Tom Green
That
County
doesn't
didn't
matter.
build this one, doesn't own it.
You can transfer ownership. You can sell the dang Coliseum to the county.
But it's a city challenge. Let the city take care of it. As a former county commissioner, that's what I would have said. It's your problem. You fix it.
Because you don't want to solve the problem for the people.
And it's not my problem.
Yeah, it is.
I have no jurisdiction
You're-
over the Coliseum at all as a county commissioner.
The guy living on Canyon Creek. I'm sorry, guys, on Canyon Creek. I keep using an example, but the guy living on Canyon Creek lives in the same county that you were commissioner for. Lives in the same city. So you're basically have the same person, same people that you are supposed to serve.
Read the Constitution.
Well, every county in the world has a Coliseum.
But they voted to build it.
Well, you can vote to buy it.
It's not to solve the city's problem.
I mean,
The city doesn't even have its own jail. We just spent $80 million on a jail for the city.
and do cities have jails?
Yes.
Anywhere else?
Of course.
No.
The city of San Angelo used to have one.
Well, that's the county gives free jails to everybody. So why would they want to have a jail?
Okay.
But the county doesn't have an ambulance service to go serve the county.
Volunteer fire departments.
Oh, come on. All right, maybe in Grape Creek.
Again, read the Constitution. What are counties supposed to do?
Well, they have all counties have coliseums. We are like an elected police chief, and our city owns the coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
We can fix that by selling the coliseum to the county.
Not without changing state law.
Why not? Why no? You can change. You could buy the coliseum.
Again, you've never been an elected county official, so I'll give you.
I bet you
pass on that.
there's a way to do it, and it would make more sense to have the county carry the debt.
The city owns.
Someone's going to carry the debt, whether the city or the county. The people are going to have the same amount of debt no matter what. All you're doing by doing this, being stubborn on the city, is giving Christoval and Grape Creek and Wall a break. And I want to tax them too for the Coliseum because they enjoy it as much as the guy on Canyon Creek does.
That's all fine and good, but it's still a city facility that the city has shirked its responsibility.
I wonder if
You want to take the county to take over the city? We can do that. We can revoke the city's charter. The city of San Angelo doesn't have to exist.
No, it doesn't. We can revoke it,
It's been revoked before.
and then we won't have a police force anymore.
Absolutely, you would under the sheriff's office, and the sheriff is the only one constitutionally that has the job of
All right, so
enforcing law enforcement.
Yantis is going for Armageddon Day, but in the meantime, we have a police chief race, and right now it's Travis Griffith winning by 65 votes. I don't think they've got nothing. More results have come out. So that what happens is we get these arguments and these discussions about coliseums. I hope you guys are learning from the Coliseum discussion, but he's hard-headed on the county, and I think the county ought to bend a little bit.
Well, you know how you do that?
Yeah, you elect people to make it bend.
You go vote, and you
There you
elect
go.
people to do that.
Yeah, elect people to solve problems, and it really is a problem. And it's a problem that needs to be solved. And let me tell you why I think we need a new Coliseum. I personally think we ought to think bigger and build a $200 million Coliseum Convention Hotel. You build it, Field of Dreams. You build it, they will come. Everyone says I'm crazy. This town can't afford it. Okay, well, let's start there. And then convince me that spending $40-50 million on that old Coliseum is worth it. But we do need to do something spectacular for this rodeo association. I think Justin Jonas is an outlier. You don't have a guy like that. show up and lead the rodeo association like it has.
Right.
He's got a lot of vision. I think Josh Hilton, who's his right-hand man down
Hilton's
there,
really made a difference there.
yeah. If we didn't have the right people there, I wouldn't be for it. But we have the right people, and I think we ought to. If when you reward forward-looking leaders like that, they do wonderful things that change the world. How's that? That's why we need a Coliseum.
That makes sense to me. And you know, with a 90-year-old rodeo that's one of the top in the nation and the top in Texas, and I think you have to protect it and promote it. And I think that again, you know, you just follow where the election goes. The next election that can have any impact on that is the May municipal election
For
mayor of San Angelo,
which is in 1 year.
in 2025.
Yeah, it's in May of 2025. We're going to start heating up for that. Man, I wonder if I'm going to get hated as much in that election as I have in this election.
Of course you are. Of course you are.
Why can't we just have loving elections? No, I really don't want any loving elections. I want y'all to hate me.
Well, you know, they have those in Russia.
Oh, yeah, you die. Or you get to go to the gulag.
There's only
Man,
one.
I hope if Travis, he's winning by 65 votes, I might be headed to the gulag early. I don't know. But we talked about the Coliseums, the cost of the Coliseum per person. I think it's between $50 and $200, you know, per year.
Yeah.
Per year. I think it's a good investment. And here's another thing. If you look, you know, I'm big on history. I'm spotty on the details on this, but you know how Abilene kind of owns the equestrian world, the horses, where all the money, that's where the real money is. And, you know, those rich people and their fancy horses, you know, 15 hands. And, you know, anyway, the reason why Abilene got the equestrian center, we didn't, was because we were going to do it. We're going to build it out there at the rodeo. We're going to have this gigantic equestrian center. Some of the donors, some of the good old boys back in the 70s, I think it was the guy that ran GTE at the time. GTE pulled out, and we didn't build it. And so now we don't own horses.
Okay.
Abilene has it. So we don't build, I mean, it's kind of a defensive move to say we don't improve our Coliseum. We're going to diminish our rodeo. Or we could. Someone's going to come in with a better shtick on rodeo. You know, Fort Worth could come out and say, all right, we'll let everyone compete in our rodeo just like San Angelo. Next thing you know, why do we want to come out to San Angelo, that dumpy old Coliseum, blah, blah, blah.
Well, you know, it's kind of like the airport. You know, Angelo State University now has a flight school out there, and Angelo State University now has a rodeo team, and they bought the old Bly Arena next to the San Angelo Coliseum. So there's money out there, there's interest in there from other places. So again, it's going to take leadership and vision to get that Coliseum project done.
So anyway, Yantis has done a complete 180 on the Coliseum, ladies and gentlemen. That's news.
Well, when that all started, I said, you know, don't come to the knocking on the door of the county to fund it.
Yeah, because the county didn't own it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think they could have gone a little bit further trying to explore how to do it. I mean, they basically had a bond attorney, bond counsel say, I don't think the attorney general will allow this, as opposed to going in there, the county going in there and saying, okay, what do we need? What do you think how would we structure this deal so that the attorney general would be more favorable to it? He didn't do any of that. They said, the bond counsel said it won't happen, so we're just not going to do it.
Well, and that's not what commissioners' courts do. That's just not what they do.
Well,
the city council, you can negotiate anything. You are limited constitutionally. The state of Texas tells you what you can only do what the state of Texas tells you can do in county government.
Okay, back to this county-centric government stuff. Let's go to the election results. Do we have anything? We don't have any updates yet. You haven't refreshed it, have you? Is it refreshed? Man, what is taking them so long? It is 8:09.
Well, I think it's going to take a little bit to get all those boxes back in, and you still have the physical distance and the state requirements to lock up and secure that information and get it. No matter how many votes were cast, you still have the same physical process of getting from the polling location, shutting it down, getting to the elections office. So
You know, the interesting thing about these voting centers, you know, this has become a point of contention with the right wing Republican Party of Texas. You know, they're trying to say, let's get rid of these voting centers. Go back to precinct voting. That because of election security, election integrity. You had a situation up in Dallas where someone, well, they got Dade Phelan's ballot, and they were able to determine who he voted for, and they got Matt Rinaldi, the chairman. They got his ballot, and they showed how, and they were able to do it because of the voting centers. And I don't know the details, but there's a lawsuit that was filed in Williamson County to do away with voting centers because of the ballot insecurity or something like that. I think that's the craziest thing in the world. I mean, how many precincts do we have? I mean, how many voting locations would we have if we went back to precinct-based voting?
Well, we couldn't afford it. The county couldn't afford the elections equipment that would be required for precinct voting now.
Because election equipment now costs. I mean, I think the last appropriation was almost $700,000.
Yeah,
and that was for a software update.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't have the machine. You can't afford the number of machines to vote with the number of precincts that we have.
But at the same time, it is when you have a city-only election, and this is the only thing on the ballot. It makes no sense to have a voting center in Christoval, Grape Creek, or Vancourt.
Exactly.
And the reason why we're waiting until 8:09 or 8:10 or whatever time it is because they got to drive whoever they might have had one vote in Vancourt. Some guy that lived on Canyon Creek was driving back into town and stopped in Vancourt
to vote.
and voted. But we got to wait for someone to haul that ballot box back to the county office.
And that's the process we live under now. So,
but I think they ought to modify the law, however you do it, so that if it's a city, you only have to place the voting centers inside the city limits. Now, when it's only city limit. I mean, it's a countywide vote. I understand put it in Vancourt.
Yeah.
But it makes no sense to put if you have to live inside the city limits to have a voting center in Vancourt. And I'll give you a real world example. May 4th election. I couldn't vote in the police chief election because I live outside thank God I live outside. Travis Griffith up by 65 votes. He has no jurisdiction over me. Wonderful. I'll just stay outside of the county if he wins. But I could vote in the Christoval bond election for the Christoval ISD.
Yep.
And my wife and I come back from Dallas, or no, not Dallas, from Lubbock, and we saw the voting flags there at Grape Creek, at the Grape Creek Administration Building.
Yep.
And we pulled in there and we voted in Grape Creek for a Christoval school board election. So I asked the fine lady there who's getting paid probably $20 an hour or $25 an hour, wherever they pay election workers, how many people have voted here? He goes, you're our fourth ones. And you're third and fourth ones.
Yep.
And this was like, toward the end of the day. So there you are. I mean, what a waste of effort.
Well, and the far right wing of the Republican Party has done some other things that don't really make a lot of sense, like in Kerr and Gillespie counties where they decided to hand count the primary.
Yeah.
ballots.
Well, that actually helped out Vanna Hudson because you have to wait for the Vancourt ballot box to come in. So now we're not the last county on Texas Tribune.
Tremendously expensive and less accurate.
Right.
So they're.
But the Chinese can't hack it.
Yeah, that's true.
If you ever walk in, this is a funny thing. All the conspiracy theories about the voting machines from 2020, and there's this guy who probably went through Goodfellow and he became an Air Force intelligence officer or whatever, and he served his 4 years and got out as a captain, didn't retire, and all of a sudden he's a former Air Force intelligence analyst. Right?
Yes.
And so he got some kind of Excel spreadsheet and ran some kind of kooky numbers on it and determined that Tom Green County likely had voter fraud. And so we showed up on all these right-wing conspiracy posts as a yellow county out there in the middle of green West Texas. Yeah. And Vanna got so many calls on that.
Oh, of course.
And so whenever you see Vanna, just say, "Hey, I tripped over an Ethernet wire going to your voting thing." She goes, "I don't have the internet hooked up to my voting machines."
Yep.
So anyway, we're still waiting. And James, what is taking so long?
Call the elections office and ask them.
Okay, you're going to call. He's calling the elections office to find out what's going on. What else can we talk about, Yantis? I didn't know we were going to talk this long.
Well, it may be a while. We might take a break and come back and make a few phone calls. And
That's what we're going to do. We're going to go find out what's going on. We'll find out on the ground, and we'll come back What do you say? It's 8:14. We'll come back in 45, or we'll come back by 9.
Sounds good.
All right. Until then, I'm Joe Hyde, and to my left is Yantis Green, senior political analyst for San Angelo Live.
Yep.
And we're here for the 2024 police chief runoff election. Right now, it's 8:15 in the evening. We're still waiting on returns with early voting and absentee voting in. We have Travis Griffith leading the pack, which is a pack of 2, by 65 votes. It's an election between Travis Griffith and Mike Hernandez. And until 9 o'clock, we'll see ya.